but now it's starting.
Welcome, everyone. We're in another YouTube live session, and it is on the subject of lead gen. You're going to hear some new things and a lot of research. I'll talk to you more about it in just a moment, but first, let me take you to a simple question. You're going to want to use the page that you have in order to chat with us back and forth around these questions. I'm showing you two versions of the same marketing approach. So, 1 and 2, A and B. Which one of these do you think will produce the highest conversion rate? Is it A or is it B? And while you're looking at that, give us some thoughts. And Dave, good to have you back on the call. And just go ahead and vote. Tell us, A or B. Now, I'm going to give you a moment to do that. And in a moment, I'll show you a link. But I'm going to be teaching from a special tool that we created for you called the Lead Gen Swipe File. It has 22 case studies with before and after and key points. We'll be dipping into it in and out as I teach today, but you can download that at meclabs.com/leadgen. And I am leaving the page up for you all so that you can see it, but I'll just show you that link one moment here. meclabs.com/leadgen. It's free. All we want you to do is to be able to have it as a resource to work with us as we go forward. So you can see the two pieces. These are excerpts from that file. Which one? I see Dave says A. We're getting some strong Meclabs people here voting based on a good understanding of how they should be viewing a page. Good job looking at Christy and Chris, and there's more coming in. But I want you to keep an eye on this because it's going to come up later in the deck and we're going to use it to learn. Now, having said that, I have another task for you to do at the beginning of this so that we can be as productive as possible. I do not know if we will have enough time to do this, but I'd like to analyze some of your competitors' lead gen pages. If you have a competitor and you'd like us to look at their page, or if you'd like us to look at yours, let us know, and we will we'll bring it up to the screen and we'll talk about it in light of the principles we're learning today if we have time at the end. For now, I want to take you into more depth in a case study from the Lead Gen deck, Test Protocol 1560. This group offers a minimally invasive medical treatment for people suffering from chronic pain. So they're selling a medical procedure. And the question here is, which approach will generate the highest lead conversion rate? And I'm sharing this with you because the results might be counterintuitive. This is the anonymized page. If it doesn't look pretty, it's because much of the page has been blocked to protect the brand. And you'll see that's why all the squares and boxes are there, but it doesn't matter for the purposes of this experiment. Take a look at the approach. Now, take a look at the treatment. Meclabbers, tell me what you see in that treatment that is a surprise from our previous teaching. There looks to be a major violation as it relates to things we've taught in the past. Can anybody see what that is? Well, let me help you as you're thinking. There are 3 evenly weighted columns. And if you've been with us over the years, we've shown you in test after test how that often is detrimental to conversion. So let's look at the two side by side. You have the control and you have the treatment. What did you get in terms of a result between the two in a single factorial A/B test time done in classic approach with validity, etc., 95% confidence interval? You can see it here, a 331% increase. Now that's pretty powerful. What's going on here? Why did adding 3 columns produce a 331% lift? Let's think about it for a moment. It all connects to lead gen. Let's take a look at a different case study. This is Test Protocol 1576. All right, there's the control. Any ideas? What would you do to improve this page? Somebody use the chat feature and let us know. What would you do to improve the result of this gas and oil page? I'm going to let these come in, and I know there's a lag time between when I speak in the studio and when you actually see it in front of your computer. Well, but take a moment. Dave said, oh my God, start over. Good point. All right. Somebody else. Too many click options. Somebody else. That was Stephen. Thanks for your feedback, Stephen. Somebody else. You know, I've mentioned this in the past, but we monitor every one of your comments because they help us understand the depth of our audience, their interest, what their skill level is, and all of that plays into how we design the next of these. So I appreciate your participation. Chris says, minimize the menu options. All right, so let me just show you the whole piece. This is the control, step 1 and step 2. And then you have the treatment. So the treatment is limited because we weren't allowed to change many pieces on this, and we were focused on one critical piece. But you'll notice there's a difference, and I'll go a little bit further to show you the control and the treatment side by side. So step 1 in the control, all right, and step 2. Now, do you notice at the bottom on the treatment, we've done something radically different than the control. Look at step 2 of the control. What is the difference between the control step 2 layout and the treatment layout? Just put your answers in, and as you're doing that, let me help you just a moment. We've gone from a 3-column design with evenly weighted columns, evenly weighted options, to a single column, vertical flow. What is the difference? 246%. Team, that's a lot of revenue, and that's all validated with careful science. What's happening here? And more importantly, why did 3 columns work in one situation and not work in the other? I'm going to touch that for just a moment, but I am going to introduce you to 3 dangerous mistakes that we make frequently, and we're going to unpack that as we delve into this lead gen file. But I will point out a difference. 3 columns at the beginning of a process when people are self-filtering can increase conversion, whereas 3 columns for the main argument or 3 columns for the call to action, when evenly weighted, can be a major detriment to conversion. Now, there are always exceptions, but still, that's an important piece to remember, and it really brings us to the point of the whole day. How can we invest the next 30 minutes to find the fastest way to amplify our lead flow? How can we invest the next 30 minutes to find the fastest way to amplify our lead flow? So many of these case studies come from something we call a quick win intensive, where it's not just teaching and it's not just consulting. We team up in like a 2-day boot camp workshop, helping you build your pages, teaching you, and then actually working with you, coaching and feedback. That's where a lot of these case studies come from. And if you're interested in getting help with some of these pages, you can find out about that at Meclabs/Quick Win Intensive. But I'm going to work today across 3 common failures, all right? So here's the first one. Failure to view your lead generation funnel through the lens of a properly weighted mental fulcrum. Now, you'll notice that there is an image of a fulcrum at the bottom of the studio picture behind me. What I want to share with you, and that's an excerpt from the book, The Marketer's Philosopher, but I want to share with you sort of how to think about your lead gen form and the most common mistake I see. So we're going to call this triangle a fulcrum. I'm going to use green to represent perceived value. Now, perceived is the key word, because if it's not perceived, it is unlikely going to be received. People who don't perceive the value will have a negative reaction as they weigh your cost against your value. Take a look here at perceived cost. In fact, let's change that so it's closer to, there we go, perceived cost. And as you're looking at the 2 of these, it's critical for you to understand that every lead generation device is being weighed with a cognitive calculation, a sort of math calculation that occurs at mostly subconscious level. And here's what happens. You see the fulcrum. If we don't view our device for capturing leads through the lens of the fulcrum, we will not be able to see it through customer eyes and understand how customers are processing and making the decision. I've spent 30 years of my life and ran 20,000 plus experiments to understand the answer to a single question. Why do people say yes? Given a set of options, why do they select one over the other? And I'm going to take you through a series of forms, and I'm going to show you how to look at them through the lens the intellectual lens that the fulcrum gives us. In fact, if you look at the diagram I have in front of me right now, when a form is wrong, essentially all that's going on is, do you see this lever? This lever is being tilted in either the right or wrong way. When it's going right, it's in the favor of perceived value. The weight of this piece outweighs the weight of this piece. Now, I'm going to ask you a challenging question, just a little piece of physics, but common sense too. What are the only two ways that I can tilt the fulcrum? Because I want it tilted as I have illustrated here. This is what produces the big conversion lifts. But many of us are so blinded by our self-interest, we can't do this math right. And I'm going to show you how to think about that in more depth with a case study in just a moment. But take a look and tell me, what are the two ways we can tilt the fulcrum so that perceived value outweighs perceived cost? Think about the weight and give me an answer. All right? By the way, I appreciate the people that are liking what we're doing right now. That's gracious of you. The more you do, obviously the more views we get, and that's part of the strategy. But to like and share and subscribe, and be sure and subscribe, because we're going to probably double these to twice a week. We're still thinking about that. But there's a lot of content we've been building for what we're going to do together. As you look at this, let's move into a case study. And I'm still waiting for someone to try and answer the question, what can you do to reduce, to tilt that fulcrum? As you're thinking about that, I'm going to take you to a case study. Here it is, Test Protocol 1416. This is a home builder. And you'll see there are two versions, a control and a treatment. And I'm going to tell you, I'll be flying through slides today. I have over 100 slides. This is going to be so dense and so packed that if you just hang with me and really concentrate, we're going to walk away with new content, even for existing, Meclabs students and subscribers. There are thousands of you who have taken courses and classes. We're going to step it up slightly today. Take a look at the two of these side by side. There is a control and there's a treatment. You notice the green box. What is the green box for? Well, in the treatment, we did the simplest, easiest change you could probably make here. We simply made the phone optional. Now, you all know about this. There's nothing profound about making the phone optional. You know that that takes some friction away. But I want you to know that when we remove that treatment, we did one of the two things, one of the only two moves you can make to tilt the fulcrum. What move was it? Well, we reduced weight on this side. We didn't add any value. We didn't do anything to increase appeal. All we did is subtract some weight from the right side of the fulcrum. And just remember this. I said two ways. What are the two ways? Either increase the weight of the value or decrease the weight of the cost side. Now, if you are a marketer striving for mastery and conversion expertise, let me suggest to you that is the entire task of the conversion marketer right there. Everything we do is about making this change in the mind. It does not happen on the page. It happens inside of the mind. And that's why we have to see through the page, through the zeros and ones and pixelation into the actual thought sequence. All right, so we did something simple in this experiment. We reduced weight. But here's what's fascinating about it. This is the surprise, because there's a small surprise here. And there it is. A 275% increase in email capture. Now hold on a second. How often are you seeing those kinds of test results? How did this produce such an impact? In fact, the answer to how is a more profound question. Why? What was happening in the mind? I'll tell you what it was. Providing the phone number was not just a matter of friction. Providing the phone number was anxiety. And anxiety is more lethal to the close than anything else you can do on the negative side. People were anxious. They had psychological concern. That's the technical definition. Psychological concern. The technical definition for friction is psychological resistance. You could say that anxiety is a form of resistance, but it's a very specialized form that requires specialized approach. You can't treat it like you treat friction. You won't get the result. When we took a tiny change to the page, we actually increased a major or a large impact in terms of the cognitive flow. In fact, let's look at it in a different way. Let's suppose that we didn't have a fulcrum. The fulcrum visualizes. But let me use the simplest math possible. So I'm going to assume that the perceived value had a weight. We're going to give it a weight of 5 MUs, 5 mental units. All right, now, to keep this fulcrum balanced, what weight would need to be on the other side? Somebody put that into your, hit me up with an answer. What weight do we need over here to keep the fulcrum level? All right, that's correct. We need 5. So 5 more would keep this level. At present, however, what we had probably was more like 2. And let's make this, let's be generous and call this the negative weight, let's call it a 3. Now, that's a minus 3. This is a positive 2. I want you to do your math challenge of the day. What is 2 minus 3? It's pretty simple, right? Negative 1. What happens if the fulcrum is at negative 1? Conversion declines, and only the most motivated people will say yes. Now, so far, I haven't said anything that I haven't taught in one way or another in the past, but we're going to gallop towards the third point where I'm going to break down steps for you. But first of all, let me just suggest this. Understand that's the cognitive calculation happening in the mind. Understand the importance of making certain that there is more weight on the value side than there is on the cost side. With that understanding, let's quickly move to another case study. So in this case, it's a physicians-only social network. And the question is, which microsite content approach will result in the largest lead rate? Many of you have microsites or lead gen forms. And I'm going to show you, all right? So here is, the original page is designed to connect the visitor with all the information. You might have recalled that we looked at this page at the beginning of this time together. And I want to suggest something before I get into the control and treatment. Because many of you are joining us, after we already began. You can download the file I'm working from at Meclabs/Lead Gen. It is a swipe file with 22 experiments. It costs you no money, and it's full of content that might be able to help you. I'm sharing it with you because I want you to be able to keep up with this. And if you have the file, you can skip ahead and look at things, etc. But take a look at the control, and now let's take a look at the treatment. By the way, I'll go back to the control to point out this. You had to click through from this page to see free reports, product info, about info, and new releases. Now, what I'm about to show you is going to require us to think differently about friction. Many of you have heard me teach friction, but you probably haven't heard me teach the danger of implied friction. Implied friction happens often when we make a change to the site, an improvement, and that improvement is designed to get this fulcrum balanced properly, but we inadvertently create more negatives than we realize, thus the fulcrum doesn't tip in the right way. Let's look at the example that I have here. Look at this treatment. Now, on the one hand, what's unique about the treatment is that we combined the content that was on the home page plus the optional content that they could click through to, and thus we created a longer page. For some reason, marketers think long equates to poor conversion, or long equates to friction. But in this case, we created more friction, you might say. We created certainly a longer page, which could create more friction, and yet we saw a remarkable result. We saw a 155% increase in conversion. So what's happening? How is that conversion rate moving in that direction? Why did the fulcrum tip so far? And more importantly, is long copy the right thing to do? And in fact, if it is that in every case? The answer is no. So how do you know the difference? I'll give you a principle, and then we're going to continue to move. I'm moving again at high speed to stay on schedule. So ultimately, the principle is this. When adding copy increases clarity to your target audience, that's what you should do. When adding copy reduces clarity or increases friction and dilutes the objectives of the page, it will hurt you. But people can't believe until they understand. It's a critical point. You cannot believe before you understand. So step 1 is I understand. Step 2 is I believe. If they don't believe, it doesn't matter what you say. The value is not perceived. So as a marketer, you may need to add copy to give them enough explanation that you can generate inspiration. You may give them enough copy that they understand. You've explained it. So now they believe, and thus they're inspired to move. Really, every single action you want someone to take is preceded by a decision, and every decision is preceded by a conclusion. And you need to understand that in order to drive the greatest response rate. Now, keeping that in mind, let's look at a really interesting example. This is from an industrial group that sells cranes. The case study is meant for you to look at later. It's in the deck that we've promised, the Lead Gen swipe file. This person was part of our Quick Win Intensive, and we were helping them drive a result. And one of the things that we had to do was figure out how to get people through a long, odious form. This was the form as it originally existed. Now, because this is purchasing a very expensive industrial piece of equipment, there was a lot of information necessary, and that necessary collection of information enabled someone to give them a proper quote, et cetera, et cetera. So, what did we do? Well, we want to reduce friction, but we can't reduce the form fields. What would you do? Well, what is friction? Again, we're trying to tilt the fulcrum. There's psychological resistance on the cost side, and there's some value here. When this outweighs this, you're in trouble. So in this case, we used something I like to call as whisper fields. And what I mean is you begin to whisper in their ear, so to speak, explaining why you're asking for each piece of information. So they are told what this is about and why we're asking. So they no longer feel like they're just being assaulted with requests for information, but by providing the information, they understand that you can provide them more value. So we changed the way we describe the form fields. We didn't even have to use complicated programming. And you can see an example here. And again, look this up later. Time doesn't permit me to go into depth here. I just want to make a point. We had to tilt the fulcrum, and in this case, we were reducing the perceived cost by giving them a remedy for the psychological resistance, for the friction. And in fact, if you look at this, the net result was significant enough that it drove enormous upside for the business, 135%. So the first point is essential. You've got to understand how to see your form through the cognitive calculation that we visualize with the analogy of a fulcrum. May I just stop you? Because I want you to get value, and I want to help you. And I'm going to go to a second point. But if I were you, listening to this session and trying to get value tomorrow, I would take my current lead generation approach. It might be a download form, whatever device you use to capture information. And I would draw a fulcrum. I'd print the page. There's something to be said for old-fashioned paper and a pen. I would draw a fulcrum with perceived value, perceived cost, and then I would draw lines. Like I would literally draw, let's just take the page. Let me help you with that. So let's take all this off for just a moment. And let's suppose that you have your page printed and you have this written at the top of the page. So this is our page. As you're looking at the elements on the page, identify the perceived value, how strong is that, and just draw lines to the places where there's perceived value from this side. And then identify where there is high perceived cost or any sort of cost that you can mitigate. Mark those places on your page, and then think about how to tilt the weight, how to take more weight off the cost side and add weight to the value side. That ultimately will produce what you need for a true and effective experience on the part of the customer. Are you following me? Is this helping you? Will you give me a little bit of feedback? Are we going at the right speed? The next point's interesting. The third one is what I'm galloping towards. We're going to spend more time there. But if this is helpful, or you have advice for how we can help you right now be more effective, drop it into this, speak to us through YouTube Live, and we'll do our best to adjust. By the way, you can follow this kind of content at Twitter and at LinkedIn and Instagram. I'm putting a lot more personal stuff on Instagram in the coming weeks. But these are ways for you to keep up with the content that we're doing. And Stephen said yes, yes, yes. Thank you, Stephen. Any feedback from you would be greatly appreciated, but in the meantime, I'm going to keep going. Number 2, this is the second failure. The failure to understand the difference between primary and secondary level value propositions. What are we talking about? Well, the best way to explain that is to take you to a case study. Here is another home builder, and here is a control. And all we're going to zero in on for just a moment is that green box, which is essentially just doesn't exist on the page, but we've drawn it to pull this out and let you see it and emphasize it. In the control, we have a page that talks about a community. We want you to buy a house in that community. But take a look at that request for more information, all right? And ask yourself, what am I selling in the green box? Now, think about it for a moment. Because most of us think we're selling a house. We're trying to get people to the community to buy a house. But we're not. The page itself, and I'm going to draw this like a piece of paper. The page itself has its own value prop. But the form, and I'll draw it down here so I have more room, the form has an independent value prop. There is a type of value proposition for every action you ask someone to take. And you're asking me to take a big action, to give you confidential information, to take time and take risks that I'm going to be spammed or all the other things that go wrong when we give email addresses. And the reality is you do not sell the download, or I guess it's a download. You do not sell the download and sell the home with equal energy on the same page. Because until I get your contact information, I've got nothing. So what you've got to do is stop wasting all your energy trying to sell your product with your downloads. Make the download so attractive that it drives a high response rate. So let's look in this case. Now, I'd love to set up teach. I could teach the whole session on these 2 forms. I like simple. You can learn everything you need to know about optimization just with a headline. But let's just look at the first 3 words. Sign up below. Now, how many of you woke up this morning and said, I sure hope that when I get on YouTube Live today, Flint's going to let me sign up for something? How many of you live to sign up for another email cluttering your inbox or some other form of content and marketing? The first word of the ask focuses on what the marketer wants you to do. How is that different than the treatment? Somebody tell me what's different than the treatment. Get. What's the first word? Get. What does that tell you? Where is the locus of attention? It is no longer on the marketer, it is on the market. It is no longer on what the company wants you to do, it's on what you get from the company. Now, I can tell you right now, you could improve that entire treatment. You can improve the words, and there's so much about it I would change. But remember, this is a test, and we're only testing certain things. The sign up below to receive email updates. Who wants an email update? Not many. But who wants information about the community that you're interested in? More. There's another version of this test that produced even higher results, but let's look at the results from this test. 166% increase in leads. 166% increase. What's going on here? Well, the point you need to take away from this example is that don't confuse selling the primary product with selling the device, the participation in the lead generation device. You've got to get more weight on the fulcrum when it comes to that lead gen device. If you don't increase the perceived value of the actual lead gen offer, you're gonna be in trouble. So many times, here's what we think. We think that these parts of the page are so compelling. You know, the words we say about the product are so strong that as we talk all about that, well, it'll naturally transfer into product momentum over here for the device. But it doesn't. It may have some impact, but not enough. And so you've got to spend enough time building out the perceived value and getting that fulcrum to tip down in favor of the perceived value. Now, as you're thinking about that, let me take you something else. Here's another example of cash it in. All this is in that download. This is test protocol 4067. It is a medical provider specializing in, again, chronic pain treatment. And this gets really interesting. So look at the keywords that we're advertising. We're going to look at an AdWord. You say an AdWord? I thought we were working on Lead Gen. This is critical to Lead Gen, and understanding this example will help you get your device right and your channel marketing right. But take a look at the keywords: thyroid pain, sciatic nerve, blood pressure, kidney cyst, colonic pain, and lumbar pain. Now, we're trying to understand, when you're looking for a keyword, not a question as it relates to your marketing and your spin, but a question as it relates to the customer in their mind. What mental lever do I pull that will produce the highest response rate? Now, take a look at the experiment as it goes on. We take these ideas and build them into a set of keyword tests that are designed in the character limitations of AdWords. And what I want you to see is not the in-depth point of this experiment, because it'll take us too long, and we're just making a simple point here, but a vital one. Take a look at all these ads, and I'm just clicking through them, and I see them side by side. So you insert the condition, and then you reach out to them on that basis. So the first one is body part and pain resources. It relates to your body part. The second one is causes and solutions. Look at the text in the body of the ad. The third one emphasizes treatment options. And the fourth one emphasizes symptoms. Now, what's going on here? What's happening in this? And you can see that we're using testing not to get a conversion lift, but to get a primary understanding of what's happening in the mind of the prospective customer. And with that understanding, we can get the maximum conversion lift. When we run all of these together, we notice a pattern. Symptoms are driving the response. Now, why is that? Well, first of all, symptom connects right now to something they feel. And secondly, it connects to a negative fear. Could this be X, or could this be Y? Or I can't make this symptom stop. All of this produces an intense impact on the mind. So we learn that, but we also learn something else. Remember, when people are visiting your site, and I've taught this many times, but you'll hear it from me for the rest of my life, people don't make one giant yes. The giant macro yes of I will buy comes from a whole series of micro yeses that occur first. And those micro yeses start all the way out in the channel when they're searching for something. And I'm going to make each one of these represent like junctures in what we teach the inverted funnel. If you don't know why I'm inverting the funnel, just search that on Meclabs or Marketing Experiments, and you'll see where we teach all about that. Each of these micro yeses require me to get up this funnel, and I got to make every one a yes, a single no, and I stop. Now here's what we're understanding. A lot of the people coming in, we're still trying to figure out what to do about their symptoms. That tells me they're earlier in the thought sequence, which gives me a more effective way to communicate when they get to the page. So let's keep going. And I will move you to the third and most critical point. Failure to create in the prospect's mind a rich, coherent picture of the promised value. So how are we failing? What do we need to see to protect ourselves from diminishing returns in our lead gen campaigns? We've talked about two items thus far: the fulcrum and understanding how to see your lead gen device through the fulcrum. And then we've touched a second point that helps us understand what we have to do once we get that picture. And the third one is the failure to create in the prospect's mind a rich, coherent picture. Let's go there. I'm going to erase this, take you to a case study, and we're going to really drill on this. By the way, Paul is watching for you to submit some pages for us. Submit one of your competitors' pages or one of yours. Tell us if it's yours or your competitors, and we'll tear it down. We'll apply the fulcrum to it and everything we're learning right now at the end of this session if we have time. I want to go to the first subpoint of the third point. Select the right cognitive lever. Now, you can think about that because we showed you an illustration of that in the previous piece where we realized that symptoms were a primary driver of response in the AdWords campaign. Now, let's take it further. Test protocol 4067. And as you're doing that, let me just go right to here. So now keywords have been randomly selected and optimized to protect partner identity, as you know, but this is the essential approach. We talked about this before. We talked about this. Now, Treatment 1, it's a template test in 6 condition-based ad groups. Here's what's interesting now. The headline is specific to the ad group, but look at what we start to do. In fact, it's almost easier to see. We're changing variables. Let me go back. We're matching what we say in the headline with what we say in the ad in various combinations. And I'm going to explain it in more depth when I get to here. All right, so look at this slide. Now, as we work through this, and you saw this piece, we learned something to set up the next piece. And so here it is. These are the control ads. And you'll see that the challenge is learning from this approach, what do we do in the balance of the ad to impact the mind even further with that primary lever that we're pulling? And we had a choice. We had treatment 1, and this is really critical. This is worth studying for just a second. If treatment 1 wins, we will learn, and may I just pause you for a second? Every time you run a test, you should have already a formula in your hypothesis that says if X wins, if treatment 1 wins, then this is what I've learned about the customer. And this is what I've learned about communicating with the customer. If your tests don't have that function in the hypothesis, it's failing. But let's go here. If treatment 1 wins, we will learn that the symptom content approach is most effective, used only in the headline. This is a different approach. This time, it's used in the description, and when the description is specific to the ad group. And then here's a third time. We learn that the symptom content approach is most effective when used in both the headline and the description. So now we're talking about 3 different approaches. One where it's in the headline, one where it's emphasized in the body of the ad, and one where it's emphasized in both. Which one do you think will produce the highest conversion? Give me your thoughts. While you're putting that in, and I know there's a little bit of lag time, I'm going to take you to the result. Treatment 3. Putting it in both places doubled down on the messaging, which had a huge impact on the impact. All right, now if you're following me, it had a huge impact on the mental impact. All right, as you follow me, let's take a look at another key principle. So we select the right lever. Make sure you're not pulling on the wrong piece. Is it convenience? Is it price? Is it your years in business? Is it your selection? Is it your inventory? Is it the authority of your company experts? All of these are ways that we can pull a lever in the mind. Let's go to the second piece. Once you know which lever to pull, you have to figure out how to balance focus and specificity. And that's a strange combination. What does that mean? Well, I'll break it out for you with an example. This is a case study, test protocol 1483, and this is that physicians network. And notice this. So this is designed to get you to download free results, which of course is a lead generation device. Now, as you look at that, as you consider that, I want to show you the treatment, because the treatment does something radically different. One of the things that we noticed in the control was that when we sent the email with the opportunity to download, we got a wild variance in our conversion rates. Well, we chalked that up to being a balance point between the specificity that people need in terms of an article that appeals directly to their needs, its relevance. And not every send was relevant to every person in the audience. So what do? Well, we created a treatment that had the primary piece, but then beneath it, you'll notice there's a series of links. And in this case, adding more calls to action was a positive because it gave you 5 other choices, 5 other pieces of content. And those 5, balanced against the emphasis of the first, gave a wider net to the appeal. What did it produce? 197% increase in email capture. So we're talking about how important it is for you to get the value part of the fulcrum right. If you take this third point and you really think it through, we've talked about this fulcrum, and we've talked about the importance of getting it weighted like this, with perceived value here and perceived cost here. And in the second point that I taught today, we're talking to you about how to reduce weight on this side, subtraction. But now we're talking about how to increase the weight on the value side. And that comes by helping people visualize the true value and the resulting customer experience. With that in mind, let me take you to a way that that approach sort of cashes in by illustrating the value with powerful imagery. So we've said, get the right lever. If you're pulling on the wrong lever, it doesn't matter how hard you pull. But then when you get the right lever, figure out how much you need to balance that lever with additional levers that might appeal to other segments of your audience. Finally, illustrate that value. Make it tangible. Make sure you can feel it with all 5 senses if possible. Don't tell me about a white paper, show it to me. Don't tell me it's valuable, give me the table of contents. Don't tell me that it's authoritative or helpful. Tell me about the credentials of the person that wrote it, build their authority. Everything you do to ratchet up appeal puts more weight on the value side of the fulcrum. All right? So let's take a look at this in an example. Here is a huge roll-up from one of the largest, if I told you the name, you know them instantly. I won't say much about this facility except this group is where like Britney Spears and others were gone. And the goal here is to try and get more patient inquiries. So there's the control. And let's look at the treatment. Now, you're going to find there's only one primary change in the treatment, the imagery. So look at this, control, treatment. Now, many people would find the control more attractive than the treatment in some ways. It's a nice looking page. It looks smart. It looks well optimized. But we unfold a narrative and we use imagery to make that narrative more power. And you can see there's a difference in the pictures and in the imagery. What is the result? 220% increase. Now that's huge. That's huge. So again, what we really did is what I'm asking every marketer on this program to do, and that is see your lead generation device through the lens of the fulcrum, reduce the perceived cost, and increase the perceived value. Now, if that's making sense for you, Paul's got some of your pages. We're going to look at them. I'll bring this all together with a case study here in the end, but I'm going to go to one of your pages right now. If Cliff and them are ready, go ahead and pull up one of those pages, Paul. Giving them just a second. By the way, if you haven't, I introduced Paul last time, but I got to show you something today. It's hilarious. I got in here and saw Paul had a special shirt on. Now, Paul tests in eBay and has a whole testing bed and a business in eBay. We jokingly call him the eBay king. He works full-time here. But come over here, Paul, and I'll tell you what he found in a thrift store. He found a blue t-shirt. There you go. I got to get you on camera with this. And it says, Conversion Guru. So there you go. He is a conversion guru. How he found that shirt, I don't know. He certainly didn't give it to me. It tells you a lot right there. And anyway, Paul's going to pull up your site and we're going to look at it. Paul, while you're pulling that up, should I do another case study, or are you ready to go?
So, do a final case study. No.
Okay, we got one up right now, Ruby Guides. Unlock the full power of Ruby with Ruby Guides. And now we see, are you looking to learn everything you can about Ruby so you can become an awesome Ruby developer that is happy and proud of his work? It's looking good. Paul, scroll down so we can all see the whole page. Yeah, and there is a lag, right? How to use the Ruby Select method, the ultimate guide. I'm going down. These are these, I assume these are sort of reports or guides that you can get, and I see read more, keep going. All the way down. Is there a lead engagement device on the page? Where did that come in? Is that the bottom of the page, Paul? All right. So let's talk about this for just a moment. Go all the way up to the top. And then we're going to do one thing. I want to click on one of the read mores. Click on any one of them and let's take a look at what comes up. Now, marketer, this is a chance to learn and apply. I want your brain working with me right now. All right? So think about it and click on read more. There we go. All right, scroll down. And by the way, if you want to follow along, it's rubyguides.com. Be sure and buy something from this brave marketer. All right, scroll down. Understanding layouts. Keep going. All right, so I have to ask the marketer, come all the way up to the top, if you would, and bring me back to the home page. Who submitted the page? Okay, so Jesus, can you tell us, what do you want me to do when I get to this site? Are you trying to get me to complete a device? Like, where do you get contact information from me? You can take a moment to fill this in, but off the top, it doesn't matter what we do with the fulcrum if I don't have a clear way to respond. And if I don't see how to respond, if I'm interested, let's click on yes, help me improve my Ruby skills. Let's click on that button. All right, there's the first device I've seen. Okay, You can start writing better Ruby code today with the tips and advice that I will send you when you join my newsletter, all right? X that out and let's come back. So let me suggest for you the first thing I would do is ask myself where they are in the thought sequence. And if you have people in the thought sequence coming to this page that are ready to do something, you may get a lot of value by putting a form on the page that captures this information. That's a critical piece. And if you do that, it can already improve your conversion. But now I'm going to take the pop-up and I'm going to suggest, by the way, that you consider changing it to an interstitial, depending on your audience. That's another way to improve sort of layout and flow. But let's focus on this. Marketers, we're going to help Jesus now. So take a look at this and tell me, how would you get the fulcrum more effective in this? All right, keep that up so that I can just look at it and talk about it with you. All right, as you're looking at that with me, a lot of times I'm looking off screen because I have monitors everywhere and they have so many different things on these monitors. But take a look. We either are going to have to take off negatives or increase positives. So I want to talk to you about how I would reduce negatives. I want to take weight off this side of the fulcrum. What do? Well, one, what happens when I click on the green button? Is this an email? Is this a download? Are you going to share my email with anyone? Is my privacy protected? None of the friction, anxiety that is erased when I think about giving my information to you is being addressed. There's nothing to reduce friction that I can see, nothing to reduce anxiety that I can see. So you need to make me some promises and make me feel safe. All by itself, that can drive up your result. Does everyone see how that's taking weight off the fulcrum? Now somebody tell me how to put value on this. Increase the value. Change the headline. All right, we'll talk about that. Dave, write a headline for it. All right, somebody else. He's got get tips and advice. All right, start with get and make it real clear. But I'm going to take Dave's point and say that's an improvement. But how many of you are looking for tips and advice, or doesn't that sort of feel like something you get everywhere? Is this a report? Is this 12 pages? Is this 3 pages? Is this a link inside of a password protected area that you're going to email me to? Do I get it instantly? I'm concerned about that. I would change value by, first of all, changing the button to tell me that I'm going to get it instantly, I'm going to get it now, or that it's fast, or something that helps me realize it's instant and I get full access to it. Let's go up to the headline again. You can start writing better Ruby code. You can start writing. It takes a long time before I fully understand what you're doing. And then it says, when you join my newsletter. How many of you on this call want to join another newsletter? If this is what you're trying to sell, then show me an example of what the newsletter looks like. Tell me how pages is. How frequently? Are you going to mail me every day? Are you going to mail me every week? None of this is being visualized for me, which is the critical piece we've been teaching. You've done very little. And Jesus, I hope I'm not sounding harsh. If so, slap me. I don't mean to be that way, but I'm thinking about this like a jaded consumer. And so there's a lot to do right here that will increase your perceived value. And I'm gonna make a list. Stronger headline. Thank you, Dave. Somebody else said, get 21 ways to write better Ruby code now. Stephen, good headline. Get 21 ways to write better Ruby code now. Now it's specific, it's measurable. So give me something measurable. That's the next point. Here's a third one. Can you give me a picture? I need to see what it is I'm trying to get. What's it going to look like when I get this? And then in addition, how do I know that it comes on a weekly basis, a monthly basis? What if it gets trapped in my spam filters? There's no instruction. There's nothing that gets me. If I click on that, I guess I just put my email and click. I don't know what happens afterwards. Let's put an email address in. I think you should put Dave Fogel's in, but we'll go ahead and put yours in, Paul. All right, we're going to enter an address and see where that goes. But are you starting to see this? How many of you see how you can apply this to your own devices? Help me visualize the value and address my resistance and my concerns so that you take weight off and we tilt the fulcrum down like this. I think we have to stop there, Paul. We'll keep going because of our time. Let's look at an example where this is done a little bit better. So we'll go back to the deck, and I'm going to take you to another one of the case studies, and I'll just go right here. Here it is. So here's the control. Now, it's got a lot of form fields, etc. But do you see there's visualization? By the way, this can be improved. This is just a control. But there is visualization, and we're moving in the right direction. Get your free guide and a bullet point, and I can get a picture of it. But let's look at how we improved it. A better picture, position on the page properly, stronger bullets, emphasizing that you're going to discover, you're going to learn, you'll be able to compare. We've made the form field have less anxiety. It looks less intimidating. It has a strong headline. Download our product guide and find the infrared camera right for you. Can this be improved? This whole page could be improved by maybe double, at least 50%. But we're visualizing. Now, I know this isn't a pop-up, but the principles are the same. And frankly, I would have something on the page, I'm talking back to Jesus, and I would consider that, and I'd have something in a pop-up in buttons, and I would also consider an interstitial. So here's the control, here's the treatment, and here's the result. Now, for those of you that know the math of conversion, that's double the leads. That's double the leads with those slight changes. So, Dave Fogel, did you submit a page? Yeah. All right, team. Now, guys, we really want to help Dave. This is our last few minutes. If you'll stick with me to the end, I'm going to go all in with you to get you as much value as I can. And Dave, let's pull up Dave's page. Dave's been a long time subscriber and part of our community, so let's see if we can help him. It's coming. I think while we're waiting, I'll go ahead and do the Meclabs expressive dance to entertain you. Interpretive dance. Yeah, it's an interpretive dance. All right, good. So Dave's been a subscriber. He's doing a lot of things right. You can see that immediately. Get a free home window tinting quote today. All right, and then he's got get a quote. By the way, on the average page, I'd have at least 2 and possibly 3 devices for capturing 3 useful devices. One could be your newsletter, although I wouldn't call it a newsletter. I'd call it a digest, or I'd call it something stronger. But that's one. 2 others could be downloads. One could be a quote, another a download. But I would have 3 pieces I'd have three nets out here in order to capture new relationships. These are connector opportunities where you connect with someone. Now that you exchange information, you can begin a genuine relationship. All right, so tinting homes with 3M window films in Jacksonville since 1980. Anybody have any thoughts about how to improve this? And can you scroll down so we can see the whole page? There's a lag. There'll be just a moment. Reduce heat, protection, comfort. Good. All right. All right, scroll down a little bit. One more time. So what are you waiting for? All right, scroll back up. So Dave's done a good job. It's above average, and there are some things we could do that helps it. It's a PPC landing page, he mentions, and add so that, all right, the logical payoff. This is a bridge. Shola says that, and it makes sense. I can't get into it now, but it's a good point. I'm going to just tear this down fast to help Dave. And to do so, I would say, Dave, start off by moving the Raise Solar Security Inc. probably somewhere a little further up the page, and don't confuse it with the headline. The 2 different fonts on top of each other create a moment, what we call a hesitation or a pause, and that pause kills momentum. If that pause is longer than, say, 1.5 to 2 seconds, they often click off the page. Separate the branding from the message a little bit. That's what I'm saying. Secondly, don't use all caps. All caps are hard to read, particularly when it's white on a photographed background. Now, you probably made it bold to make up for that, but if it's hard to read, change the background. If you can make it readable, add transparency to the background so that the font jumps. Tinting homes with 3M window films in Jacksonville since 1980. That sounds like a subheader. You're starting to indicate your value proposition. But what I would do is above that subheader, I would put a much stronger headline about what value they're going to get if they operate with you. Get, and then give them something strong. And then you may use that as your subheader. And by the way, you did something here that a lot of people fail to do, and it's good. You added a subheader. Our 3M films are the highest quality and fit your budget. The problem with that is, Dave, everybody says they're the highest quality. It's a qualitative statement with no quantifiable evidence. 1980, that's quantifiable. But highest quality, that's not. And fit your budget. You don't even know what my budget is. And you probably have something to fit all budgets. But I, approaching it as a consumer, am jaded about that. So it doesn't, I would just say this graciously, that whole subheader is wasted. You need a much stronger subheader, a stronger headline. It needs to be a complete thought. It needs to do two things: capture attention, convert it to interest. And then I would take that blue box off the bottom because it separates it. A box on top of circles doesn't flow. You stop, and you need a vertical flow. I wouldn't have something like a paragraph of text with bullet points that explains the reduced heat, protection, and comfort. I would take the three circles and make them linear instead of vertical so that there's a flowing list. This feels like three options, and I can't tell if those are buttons or not, or where to slide my mouse to click on them. I would have a conversation that says something like, trusted since 1980, raise solar security, raise whatever the name of the business is, or trusted since 1980, we have installed over X thousand tents. We have done this, this, and this, and we can help you do X, Y, and Z. Before I care about the why, I need to know the what, and that is, what is it that you do? Now, why should I select you to do that for me rather than anyone else? And Dave, the 1980 is the strongest piece I see so far on the page. It's the only key believable place. If you do that and you add two or three of the, two more devices to capture leads on this page, you'll double your results. Scroll down a little bit. Let me look at one more time. Is this helpful, audience? Is this helpful to you? We're going to stop in just a moment, but I want you to be able to apply these principles, not just for Dave, but in your own situation. By looking at something live, I think it helps us do so. All right. Okay, so Dave, that's a few things to do. Let me just say this. When you redesign the page, ship it over here to Paul, and we'll look at it and give you personal feedback to try and help you. And in fact, I can't say this for everybody that watches this, in the future, but those of you that are live today, if you want a little help, ship your page over to us, and if we can, we'll give you at least some preliminary feedback. Also, if you really want to wade into getting something strong and powerful, find out about the Quick Win Intensives. This is like a training program where I'm in the room with all of our experts and scientists with you, working for 2 days to build out the pages properly. And it's really powerful. So I would suggest that for you. As I close, and then I would suggest one more thing. Please do what Paul put on a piece of paper for me not to forget. Like, share, subscribe, and help us build a great community of evidence-based marketers. I want to thank you. Thank you for your time. Thank you for your trust. And I'll be back very soon. I haven't committed yet, but I may be doing another YouTube Live on Friday. If not, I'll definitely be next week. But keep an eye, make sure you're subscribed so you'll get the message if we happen to do one on Friday. All right? By the way, if you found this helpful or you have advice to make it better, would you just take a moment before you leave and fill out this piece? It helps me assess and compare the comments from this session to the comments from others, and we can go from there. Thank you, everybody, for being with us and investing your time. Take care.